Also mein Name ist Kathi Enderes und ich bin der Senior Vice President Research und Global Industry Analyst at the Josh Bersin Company, if you know us. Und now jetzt werde ich auf Englisch umschalten. If you know us, we are a research and advisory company for the HR profession. We're a global organization. I'm originally from Austria, but I've been living in California for quite some time. I also lived in London for a few years and in Spain for a couple of years as well. So I've been around here. And the reason why I have to do this in English is because all of my work has been for the last 25 years in English. So I don't really have kind of the vocabulary, quite frankly, to talk about this in German. So we'll just basically get started in English. You can all see my screen. Is the screen, like, you can all see it? Can I get confirmation, Peter?
Yes.
You can see the screen? Okay, everything is good with the screen? Okay,
yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump right in. So we are talking now about the rise of the superworker and how we're thinking about how AI is shaping the world of business and the world of HR. And the reason why we are thinking about that, and I'll explain in a minute what we mean by a superworker, but just to take a step back, we see around the world, we see four big themes, four big trends impacting all organizations that we work with. And we work with a lot of HR organizations around the globe. We have clients in the US, we have clients in Europe, we have clients in Asia. So around the world, we see kind of the same themes happening that impact us in HR and in business leadership. The first theme has to do with the labor market. So the labor market is very challenging in many places around the world. While we have a lot of shortages in some roles, and mostly it's frontline roles, it's kind of healthcare roles, maybe transportation, manufacturing, all of those, like maybe retail roles. But then on the other hand, there's layoffs and uncertainty in these white collar, in the knowledge worker jobs and management jobs. So we see layoffs in engineering, for example, software engineering, marketing, even in HR as well, in management positions. So it's a real balance that organizations have to strike, and that's very difficult. So that's the first theme. Second one has to do with the businesses. So every business is transforming their operating model. Every business is actually also merging with other industries. So when you were, for example, previously when you were in retail, you just had to think about retail. Now every retailer also is a financial services company. They're also getting into healthcare. They're also getting into insurance. And that happens with every industry. And from a people and culture and a job perspective, that means in HR, we don't know what jobs and what skills we need. So we need to balance that and understand what adjacent industries are like. Of course, every company now also has to be a tech company because every business, regardless of your industry, has to think about technology. And that goes to the first theme. And when we talk about AI, and every conversation that we have right now with our clients is about AI. We just had our big CHRO, Chief HR Officer roundtable yesterday with 25 global CHROs. And all they wanted to talk about is AI and how AI is shaping the world of work, how it's shaping the world of HR, how it's shaping and changing every single job. So this is, and I know we're going to talk a lot more about AI, both in HR and then what it means for us to create super workers. And the last theme has to do with the employees. So every employee is also looking for more from their organization. They feel very stressed. Employee engagement around the world is at an all-time low. Employees don't trust organizations anymore. They are really thinking that they're being left behind. They feel very threatened about AI, that they're going to lose their job to AI. So we in HR have to think about how do we make sure that employees actually can do their best work and not be left behind. Meanwhile, CEOs around the world are investing a lot in AI, but then they don't get the value out of AI. So 92% of CEOs, and that comes from the PwC global CEO study where they survey over 4,000 CEOs around the world. 92% of them have invested a lot in generative AI. They're increasing those investments. I just saw that also 62% IT budgets have gone up by 62%, but then only 7% are actually creating new revenue sources from AI. So and all of that has to do with people, with talent, with culture. It's really not so much, AI is not so much about technology. It's really much more about people. And that's why our role in HR is so important right now. And that brings us to our concept of the super worker. When we think about the AI transformation and the big opportunities in AI, it's really not just about technology, and all of these technologies seem so interesting and what they can do. But what's really at the bottom of AI and AI transformation is helping every employee become what we call a super worker. And what we mean by a super worker is any employee that amplifies and raises their productivity, their performance, and their output and their innovation with AI. So they're using AI to have their job be made better, more meaningful, much more interesting. So they offload the things, the parts of their job that's not so interesting in their job to AI in order to create a much better job. And in HR, we have the opportunity to help every single employee. And that goes with blue collar workers, that goes with white collar workers, it goes with managers, with leaders, become the super worker. Very powerful concept, very positive concept, because I know we hear a lot about AI taking people's jobs. The CEO of Anthropic last week, for example, said that AI will take 50% of the early career jobs or the entry-level jobs away, and it's going to raise kind of the unemployment rate really high. We don't think that's going to happen, because super worker organizations are those organizations that actually take AI and bring it to the employees and make everybody's job better and reinvent jobs and help employees kind of reinvent themselves all the time, be very adaptive, be very agile, be kind of in front of the problems and also in front of the technology, and help every employee actually become these super workers. Meanwhile, what's going on in the labor market is that we see that what we call the intelligence age or the post-industrial economy emerging, where it used to be like maybe 100, 150 years ago that the CFO was in the middle of everything, basically. And the CFO, the chief financial officer, was the most important person on the C-suite. And then it got to be kind of the CIO when information was kind of, information is the new gold or the new oil or whatever you said there in the 1970s and beyond. But now with AI coming into place and with us having these labor shortages and all these kind of constraints and concerns that I talked about earlier in the market, the CHRO, the chief HR officer, is really the most important kind of second right-hand person to the CEO. I was just listening to a CEO panel of 3 CEOs, and they were asked who is their most important kind of counterpart in the AI transformation. And everybody, a single one actually talked about the CHRO because of that people and culture impact. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about the super worker. So every single individual can be raised in their performance, in their contribution, with their kind of better skill-based work, better culture, what we call talent density, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, to kind of move us into this intelligence age and move us away from this industrial model where we had enough workers, but we thought workers were replaceable. That doesn't work anymore, because productivity actually over the last 150 or almost 200 years maybe has skyrocketed. It took us a very long time. It took us 100 years first, like initially, to get to a 200% increase of productivity. And that's around the world. You see some of these charts in the US and Netherlands and Germany and so on. It's the same story around the world, really. It took us a very long time initially to get to a 200% increase, and then it took a little bit less, 60 years, for the next kind of 60 years to get to that 200% increase. And now it will have taken us just 15 years going forward, basically, to get to this 200% productivity increase. And that's because of the impact of AI, because AI is really impacting us in every single part of the organization. And as we think about AI in HR, we really have to think about two sides. First, how is AI applied in the business? So how does it impact our operations jobs, our marketing jobs, our frontline manager jobs, any of the jobs that we have, the finance people's jobs, any of the jobs that we have in our organization, whatever the industry that we're in, but then also for the HR function. And we talk about it also in the concept of Galileo. That's our AI assistant that we have built based on all of our research and basically enabling the HR function. But there's many other HR systems, of course, AI in HR systems, of course, too. So we have to think about both of these sides. So on the business side, the AI has a huge opportunity actually to bring all the different functions together in the organization. Usually, most organizations, most big organizations operate in these kind of silos. You have the marketing team just do something there, and then they usually don't really integrate so well with sales or with supply chain support, manufacturing, finance, and HR. Each of these functional silos in the organization usually operate very independently. Well, if you have AI, multifunctional AI agents that can kind of pull data and create data to tell basically, for example, the sales team, hey, we had a marketing campaign here and we need to now create more sales in a specific area because these people in a specific user group, for example, responded well to our campaigns. This doesn't have to be just a manual thing. It can be done now with these multifunctional agents. So it really has the opportunity to bring all of the different areas of the business together and operate in much more effective and efficient way. In the HR area, and of course, there's so many use cases, we could spend hours on that too. In HR ourselves, we have so many opportunities to use AI in HR. So we have lots of use cases, for example, in recruiting. Recruiting is probably the area where AI has been most used because it has the most data, right? When you think about the data that you have when you're recruiting, you can essentially pull from the entire population of the world. And some of these recruiting systems actually have 1.5 billion user profiles in them and all of their skills and all of their location data and all of their experience. And so using AI in recruiting, huge opportunities, of course, there as well. But it doesn't stop there. Like when you think about career mobility, for example, creating career pathways, showing people where they could move their careers in an organization based on the skills that they have, based on the experience that they have, based on the aspirations that they have. When you think about, for example, about employee transactions or employee self-service, co-pilots, chatbots, many of these HCM systems are building them that make it much easier to get support when you want to look up some kind of policy or something like that. Learning and development, huge transformation in with AI. When you think about how content can now be created based on just uploading a PDF, for example, any kind of document, any kind of information piece and content and training courses can be created at the press of the button, and then the team can refine that. We were working, for example, with a very large consumer packaged goods company, and they said they created a learning course that would have taken them half a year usually to create, using AI-based tools to create that content within just 2 weeks. And not only that, but then also those courses, that course that was created with AI, and then their team could fine-tune it, got some of the highest ratings from employees. So they like those courses better too, because people had more time, the learning team had more time to actually spend on making it their own and making it better rather than doing all the grudge work and created learning courses. Rewards and recognition, pay equity, for example. I know this is a huge thing in Europe and beyond. Using AI for pay equity to see where there's pay transparencies and then highlight that for your HR people, for your compensation people. And then, of course, they would make the judgment call to say, where do we need to increase pay? But just giving you that information, giving you the data, performance management, a huge impact, of course, there too, on and on and on. So I couldn't like spend all the time, of course, so many use cases. And now, of course, over the last half year or a year or so, we've moved on from just having generative AI to having AI agents. And the AI agents, really easy way to understand what they do. The generative AI is kind of the ChatGPT thing, like, or any of those kind of things where you just basically talk with them and they can be your consultant or your coach or your kind of knowledge support. But the AI agent actually does things for you. So you could say the AI agent, for example, doesn't just give you information, but it does actual transactions for you. So it transacts with backend systems, with your recruiting system, with your learning system, with your HR system. So it doesn't just give you information, but actually does something as well. And of course, as all the HR technology systems build these agents, there's the question, how will these agents interact with each other? You're going to have a recruiting agent, you're going to have a career agent, for example. How are they going to work together? So how are you going to coordinate them so they're working seamlessly with each other? I know we've also heard a lot about agents also being managed as team workers or on the team. I think it's a little bit maybe misleading to think about them as people, because in the end of the day, they're not people, right? They're still systems, they're still technologies, they're still tools. But we see this as actually a huge transformation to get to this Superworker organization, all the way from kind of starting with AI assistants like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or any of these assistants, or Galileo, for example, our Galileo, to going to these AI agents that pull things together, but still stay within one function, to go to these multifunctional agents that go across different functions. So they might come from kind of recruiting to learning to performance management seamlessly and across those, or even to other areas, from HR to finance, or from HR to operations, or from HR to IT, whatever that is, all the way to what we call autonomous agents that can do entire processes altogether. Most organizations, by the way, whenever we talk with organizations, we ask them where you're at in these different stages of AI transformation. Most of them are at stage 1 or stage 2, and some of them say that we're still in stage 0. We haven't even started there yet. So I think more to come, obviously, to move to these like AI multifunctional agents or even autonomous agents. And for us in HR, what that means is in these higher stages, we need to think about work redesign, job redesign, role redesign, because the jobs of HR people, but the jobs of every employee are going to change a lot when you have these agents. So we need to first redesign the work of every person. And that's why we in HR have such a big role in this AI transformation. But then also we need to think about how we reskill and upskill and create AI proficiency, but then also other things in the workforce like curiosity, learning agility, kind of communication, all of the more human skills that you need even more of when the AI is taking some of these mundane or maybe these transactional things away from you. And that's where we see kind of a huge opportunity for HR for us to maximize our impact. And this comes from a study that we've done. It was actually a 3-part study we did together with SAP, but it's really not about SAP. This could be done with kind of any technology, where we saw what are organizations actually doing in terms of solving real business problems with AI. And what I find so powerful about this, there's real examples of real companies actually solving these business problems with AI. So one of the first problems, for example, that we highlighted here is that in HR, we have a lot of really time-consuming, complex transactions, and it's hard to basically provide kind of a good experience to our employees to answer any kind of questions that they have. So they might come to the HR service center, the HR call center, and call and say, kind of, I don't know, do I have a vacation day tomorrow, and can I take tomorrow off, right? And those are the kind, how how much is kind of, I don't know, do I get a reimbursement for my company car, whatever it is, right? So all of these policy kind of HR transactions that you get your call center involved usually takes a lot of time, these employee questions, and it's usually very hard to find the answer. So usually people then call a call center. Well, AI can solve all of those in natural language, right? You could just type it in, or you could even speak it in and ask the question, and AI will point you to the right direction and even request, maybe submit the request for your vacation day tomorrow. And one of the companies is actually a German company, Döhler, that's using this kind of a chat, kind of a very smart chat bot. It's not your old school chat bot, but your smart chat bot, AI-based chat bot, to do just that and give employees these kind of answers much more easily. Second one is about candidate experience. I know in the recruiting process, one of the common problems, of course, that candidates have is it goes into this black hole. They never know where they're at in the process. Well, you can use AI to actually help increase the transparency and get back to candidates to tell them where they stand in the process. And this company, Jerusalem Asset, did just that. Basically, they're using that, and not only increasing the satisfaction of the candidates, but then they're also cutting the recruiting time from 4 months to 4 weeks with AI. Similar, actually, recruiting based solution in the problem number 3 that we have here, where we're saying, can we make interviews more meaningful and more kind of telling and more kind of accurate for assessing job fit? And you can use AI to help you get these interview questions to the hiring manager right when they're, for example, in Microsoft Teams, when they're having these video-based interviews, and kind of using AI to generate these questions, because most people are not great at interviewing and most people don't do it a lot. So this company, Mahindra & Mahindra, they are a automotive company in India, they're doing just that. And so we have full case studies in all of these. Last one has to do with internal mobility. Delta Airlines is using AI to help their frontline employees, so their flight attendants, their crew, their kind of cleaning crew, whatever, like they have that, like the frontline employees basically in Delta Airlines, to place now over 50% of their first level managers internally from their own frontline employees, because they have this AI-based system where they show the employee which direction they could go, if they could go into a kind of a management position, what training they would need, what development they would need, what rotations they might need, and then they can place them much more easily and not lose these people because they're having a hard time kind of hiring for the frontline people, because now they see a career path and they are much more likely to join Delta Airlines. So just a few examples. And what I really like about all of these examples is how this is not just about using AI to make HR more efficient. That's certainly one part of it, right? Saving time. And we always talk about the time-saving opportunities with AI. But this also creates a better experience when you think about these candidate experience or the employee experience examples. So it just makes the experience better too. So it's not just time-saving. It also makes the whole transactions or the actions more effective. So you get, for example, better candidates in the example number 3 in the Mahindra & Mahindra example, because you have a better candidate fit, and eventually entire employee productivity of every employee, not just of the HR people, will be impacted. And so when you think about the multiplier effect that has on the entire organization, it's much bigger. So we see this really as a progression to move beyond that kind of efficiency savings, time savings, to say what impact can we actually have. And we have a whole study on that where we're looking at actual numbers and actual impact, huge opportunities, huge benchmarks there. For example, in this kind of informational search assistant, the first example that I shared here, 95% time reduction for employees to find information, 81% time reduction for HR operations people to not have to do all these help desk tickets. But then you also can think about these experience increases. For example, with a AI-based career assistant, 25% increase in employee satisfaction with career opportunities. That's great, right? And then you think about effectiveness. When you think about skills, using skills inference, AI-based skills inference, so basically understanding the skills that your candidates or your employees, internal employees have, in order to match them to an internal role, 30% better skills match on the effectiveness area, and that's the orange area. Or you could also think about entire employee productivity and performance. In the same case, 25% increase in employee performance. So those benchmarks I find hugely helpful, and our clients always find them really, really helpful because they are so specific, and it really helps organizations to kind of think about where to prioritize and which AI use cases to prioritize in order to amplify kind of the potential of every employee. And that goes back to the superworker concept. How do you do all of this? Well, it's not just about technology, it's really also about change and change management and thinking about how do you manage that change. And I know change management is such a like legacy concept when you think about it more from a kind of building up the change, like unfreezing and then refreezing, like the old school concepts where we said change is kind of discrete. But now with AI, it's constant, right? Because AI changes all the time now too. The AI capabilities change all the time. And so we can't think about change management that this kind of top down, really kind of project management activity, one big change approach where we said, we're going to move everybody along, then we're going to get them to the change, and then whew, we can go back to the old ways of working or to new ways of working, but then it's business as usual. Well, business as usual really doesn't exist anymore because every day a new AI capability comes around, every day a new breakthrough comes around. So it needs to be fostering this constant mindset of change and transformation, basically, in organizations and in people, quite frankly, and doing kind of bottom-up change, not just top-down change. So what we see actually in building these superworker organizations, we really see kind of 5 big imperatives for us in HR organizations, what we can do. And the first one has to do with redesigning work and job and organizational models. I talked about this when I talked about these 4 stages of the superworker organization, where we have to really rethink how every single job works and how we apply AI to it, what things AI will do, what things people will do, how do we put AI into the mix here, and then kind of put the job together in new ways. And that impacts also how we structure the organization, much flatter, much more agile. Second one has to do with kind of our talent model that has to be much more around what we call talent density, which means basically getting the right people into place. About every single person that we hire, it has to be complementary skills, not kind of the skills that we already have, and driving this kind of talent dense approach of talent management. Third one has to do with leadership and culture, because that's critically important. If we have a culture of learning and leadership and kind of supporting every employee to amplify their capabilities with AI to become a super worker. The fourth one has to do with what we call systemic HR. So systemic HR means we need to think about the HR organization in a completely different way, bring it together, break down silos, not think about kind of service delivery, but much more about problem solving. And the last one has to do with our technology stack as well. So how do we think about the HR technology stack? So let me talk just a little bit through each of them. So first one has to do with this kind of how do we redesign work, job, and organizational models. We have to think much more skill-based, much more activity-based rather than job-centric, because the job is so static, right? Every time we hire somebody into a job, by the time you hire somebody into a job, the job is already obsolete because new technologies come into place, new AI comes into place. We need to think about a much more modular, much more work-centric model where we're breaking the jobs out into different tasks, different activities, and then what skills do people have and what skills do people need, and what work or activities does the AI do. So rather than just bundling this up in a job, thinking about kind of a modularized work and activity approach. Talent density means basically how we're moving to for hiring, for example, every single hiring, we ask ourselves the question, do we increase productivity or do we decrease productivity? Because sometimes you hire somebody, or when you hire a lot of people, the organization gets bureaucratic, it gets slower, and actually decreases the talent and the output that people have in the organization. So thinking about it much more from a, like every single person that we add to the team, how complementary are their skills, how complementary are their experiences to bring to the table, and thinking about that kind of talent density perspective as well. Netflix, for example, is a great example of thinking about talent density. They're not a very large organization, but they're a very, very agile organization. Third area is about leadership models and culture. So less of this industrial model where we're saying this is all hierarchical, top-down leadership, cascading, kind of forcing people into kind of submission and making sure that they kind of do the work that we assign them to, much more bottom up. The fourth area is about what we call systemic HR. And systemic HR is a new approach to HR where we're thinking not just about service delivery, where we're thinking about here's our recruiting team, here's our employee experience team, here's our total rewards team, here's our HR business partners, here's our HR service delivery, HR service center, but really across all of these. And we call this framework the 4R framework. It's basically in every talent problem, thinking about it much more systemically, to saying, if we need a certain skill set, if we lack a certain skill set in our employee population, how can we at the same time think about recruiting from the outside, because that doesn't go away, but at the same time also, how can we retain the people that we already have in those jobs? At the same time also reskill and upskill and move people around that we already have in the organization, and at the same time also redesign the jobs and the work that we have around AI, using AI, for example, for all of that, to really solve the most critical business problems in HR. And the last area has to do how AI will impact the HR technology stack. So HR technology, we always think about these three layers at the bottom. You have kind of transactional systems, you have your recruiting systems, you have your learning systems, you have your HCM system, you have your compensation system, people analytics, on and on. So those are kind of the transactional systems. In the middle, you have your intelligence layer. So basically you have all the data that you have from your internal systems, but combine that with outside labor data, outside kind of talent insights. And then we have what we call now the semantic data layer, basically where AI agents interact seamlessly with your employees, with the candidates, with line managers, to really have people get their answers or get their transactions in a much more conversational and much more easy to do way. And there's like conversational chatbots, for example, in recruiting that are almost human life. There's one from a company called Paradox, where we talked with Lowe's, who are a very large retail organization here in the US, and they said that this chatbot was so, and they call her Lucy, and it has the picture of kind of a person on there, and candidates can interact with Lucy. And they said people come into their stores and bring flowers for Lucy, and some people kind of tried to get the number from Lucy, kind of to ask her out on the date. And of course, Lucy is not a person, she's an AI agent, right? And so I think those kind of things are sometimes making, I think it probably was a little bit of a letdown for people to be declined on a date from a chatbot. But on the positive side, the candidates really appreciate those kind of the immediate answer that they get. And that goes in the employee side too, and for managers as well. So you can imagine a world where everybody has kind of their digital twin almost that sits beside you and basically helps you do your job better, supports you, knows all the things that you had done, all the answers that you had, basically all the questions that you had from maybe your team or your teammates or your colleagues or your customers. I think all of this is close to being completed. So all of this, I think, is happening in the HR side. And maybe I'll close with, and I'll jump forward here. And I'm sorry, I can't actually move forward without, so you just look away because I want to land on my last slide here to see how all of this changes all of us. Our world and our role actually in HR is more important than ever. I mean, I think it's a very exciting time to be in HR. I think there's never been a more exciting time actually, and a more exciting and more important role for us. And we have a different role. We have a much bigger role. We're not just HR people anymore, like in maybe the traditional sense, but we have to be much more business consultant, understand the economy, understand change, help transformation, serve as kind of coaches, strategic advisors, all of these different roles that we can play in order to help every employee to become a super worker. Thanks so much for having me, and have a great conference. Thank you.